gave you power for this! I gave you power for this! Come on!
Oh my god.
You are the main character! Yes! Yes! Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo!
実力をいかなく発揮しレースを制したアグネ
Sorry.
担当トレーナーとして頑張るのがお前らってわけだ
Hello, fellow trainer. You are probably here because you are also figuring out how to train your Uma. The game does not exactly go into finer details on how each stat works, and sometimes even the wording of skills can be misleading. Thankfully, I am just as confused and lost as you are, and have lost countless nights of sleep and stayed awake studying multiple documents and guides to decipher how this game exactly works. Now, just a disclaimer, I did not play the JP version of this game, so my bias, I guess, and my preference and view towards strategies is very naive, fresh, and all over the place, and I think that's fine. Most of us here in Global are learning, and we are literally 4 years behind in experience, knowledge, and content updates compared to many who have played in the JP version of the game and are now playing Global. Now, I have won URA finale in every category: sprint, mile, medium, long, and dirt. Most of my wins are on 2-star and even 1-star characters, so having a top tier Uma or a 3-star Uma doesn't always guarantee you a win. Sometimes even a 3-star Uma can be tougher to train and clear their career for a lot of reasons. But this video will not be about what Umas to pull, what cards to look out for, or even support card builds, but it will instead focus on other fundamentals, mainly training your Umamusume. After all, not everyone has the luxury of having a card like Super Creek and Fine Motion, and we can at most borrow one meta card from other players, so the rest we will have to make do. But I will also briefly touch on that topic. For now, however, let's get to the basics, training your Uma. In Umamusume in particular, knowledge is power. That is why there is no shortage of guides and documents online that really break down the intricacies of Umamusume. Knowing what each stat does is just as important as knowing which stat your Umamusume needs. I'll briefly describe each stat, but also give a simplified term for it that can sort of encompass the stat as a whole. After all, at the end of the day, Umamusume can be seen as a roguelite, and in any roguelite, your ability to adapt is arguably your greatest strength. Let's start with speed. Speed is the king of all stats. Ideally, it should be your highest stat compared to any other stat because this affects how fast your Uma goes. In a race, whoever is the fastest wins. And simply put, this stat, speed, is your Uma's top speed. Next on, stamina. Stamina is a very vital stat. Stamina will drain from the moment your Uma exits the gate up until they cross the finish line. If your stamina is not high enough, when you run out of stamina, your Uma will decelerate to compensate for the lack of stamina. Essentially, you can see stamina as HP. Power is a similar stat to speed. It does affect how fast your Uma runs. Now, if you remember your basic science, going fast checks two aspects, your speed and acceleration. Power is the latter, acceleration. This stat will also affect how well your Uma runs uphill. Now do note, many race courses have an uphill in the final leg and the final spurt of the race. Power also affects how fast your Uma will reach its top speed, but more importantly, it also affects lane changing speed, ability to break out of groups whenever they get boxed in, and ability to overtake an Uma in front of them. Now many will tell you that this stat is useless. They are not entirely wrong, but this stat is not something you can ignore either. Guts does affect how fast your stamina will drain. Higher guts means your stamina or your HP will drain slower. Another thing that guts does affect is your speed and acceleration in the final spurt of the race. The part of the race where the music drastically changes and even the commentary mentions it. Final spurt. If you cannot see the race placements on the top of your screen, you are close, if not already at the final spurt. Having good amount of guts in this part of the race means your Uma will have even better speed and acceleration bonuses that the final spurt gives. Now on to wit. Now, knowledge is power, and in some literal ways, it is. Wit can affect your speed in very indirect ways. The chance of your horse rushing decreases as your wit increases. Wit also affects the trigger rate of your very precious skills. 300 is usually a good base target of how much wit you should have. At 300 wit, your skill trigger rate is roughly 70%. Whenever your Uma goes downhill, your Uma will also get a higher speed boost if your wit is higher. Now, I know that is a lot to digest, but let me summarize and simplify some very important takeaways. Speed is king and it should be your highest stat. Stamina is HP, and if it reaches 0, your speed will decrease. Power is acceleration, but more importantly, if you have high power, your Uma will break out of being boxed in faster, sooner, and more efficiently. Guts reduces your HP drain over time and gives your Uma a good speed and acceleration bonus during the final spurt. Wit increases your skill trigger chance and lowers the chance of your Uma rushing. One more thing to note, whenever you train each stat, another stat also increases slightly. Every stat gives you a few skill points. Training speed will also increase power. Training stamina will also increase guts. Training power will increase stamina. Training guts increases both power and speed, while training wit will also increase speed. It is important to note this moving forward and when you see what stat growth your Uma has bonuses on. So now that we know what each stat does, how do we apply that knowledge as we try to get to URA Finale? Another thing to take into consideration is length. Right now, we have sprint, mile, medium, and long. Here is a visual aid to help you digest this. Big 3 stats, speed, stamina, and power, have different requirements based on race length. For speed, as you go from sprint to long, your speed requirement or target speed lowers. In sprint, your Uma must reach their target speed ASAP. That's why the speed is so high for sprint Umas. In long, you have nearly thrice the time to do so, which is why your speed can be lower. Sprint and mile Umas usually have upwards of S to SS rank speed. Mediums have mostly B plus and A and above, and longs have B at the very least. Now this is assuming you do not have Godspark Parents legacies because most of us are building those, and we can only borrow one legacy from other players. Now for stamina, the longer the racetrack gets, the more of this you will need. After all, it's HP. Once it is gone, your speed is the next one to drain. All that speed won't mean much if by the final corner, your Uma is already gassed out, gasping for air, and slowing down so that they do not fall over and faint. A good target stamina to reach by the time you get to URA Finale is as follows. Sprint is roughly 150. It's almost negligible, but having 150 is very comfortable. But as you train power, like I said, power also increases stamina, you should reach 150 or more. Mile, you'd want at least 300. For medium, 450 is good, and for long, 550 is ideal. Having a gold recovery skill like Swinging Maestro will loosely reduce the stamina requirement by about 100 to 200, since stamina consumption is also affected by the running strategy, racetrack quality, like if it's firm or wet, if it's raining, etc. For power, we did mention this is acceleration. Like speed, it must be higher in short races so they can get their target speed sooner. Guts and wit in this case are not really affected by race length. A good base number for both is always 300. So having these stats lower than 300 is not ideal, but it's not a run killer. Let's move on to running strategies. You have front runners, pace chasers, late surgers, and end closers. This is another visual that shows you what stat priority each role has, excluding speed of course because speed is king, and stamina is very race length dependent, so that is already set in stone. A front runner will also want to build up guts and wit. Guts gives them a better acceleration and speed in the final spurt, which is exactly what a front runner wants. Front runners on average will have the lowest power in the race, so if another front runner or pace chaser bullies them before the final spurt, it is practically over for them. Giving them guts makes sure that no one can catch up to them in the final spurt. Wit also makes sure that they trigger their position keeping skills, which many frontrunner Umas and cards will trigger often, assuring that your frontrunner really is at the front. Higher wit also increases the speed that they gain going downhill, again, making them stay at the front as long as possible. A pace chaser is the most stamina-hungry Uma of the entire race, needing roughly 10 to 12% of the base required stamina compared to other Umas. Building stamina is very important for them. Power is very recommended here, especially if your Uma is getting unlucky from support cards and they are not getting position or navigation skills, which they will need at least one of. There is a reason why pace chasers are arguably the most straightforward strategy to build. They want one of each skill type. They want one speed boosting skill, a stamina recovery skill, and a navigation position skill. Debuffs can also work, but those are usually more effective in PvP and legend races. Pace chasers for now, right now I believe they are also the most common type, which is why the most common reason you'll lose a race as a pace chaser is not because you're not fast enough, but it's because you're getting boxed in by other pace chasers. Increasing power and getting navigation skills will help you alleviate this problem. A late surger is a very risky playstyle, but also have a very balanced stat line. That is because speed is more important than power by only a slim margin compared to pace chasers and frontrunners. Late surgers are chill in terms of stamina consumption. What they have to worry about really is power. Now, because they are at the rear half of the race, they have to be able to bully and power through their way all the way from the back to the front. They also have to be able to push and box in pace chasers as they try to overtake front runners. This is another marquee feature of the power stat. Power also does increase the speed at which your Uma changes lanes, which is exactly what late surgers will do very often. Since power raises stamina, stamina is rarely a problem that late surgers have. Speed is usually a concern, which is why you'd want skills that increase their speed, and of course the ability to navigate through the entire pack as well. An end closer is essentially a late surger with a few more steps. If you have tried or if you know how to build a late surger, end closers are very similar to that, but with an even higher power requirement. There is a reason why Gold Ship in particular, if you see her get to first place, you rarely can catch up to her. Her unique skill steadily increases her velocity, and that insane amount of power that she has as an end closer means that you cannot out-accelerate her. As such, Gold Ship is arguably the most important skill type built into her kit when you reach potential level 3, which is a navigation skill. Now, because of this nature, end closers will want perhaps a debuff that affects everyone in front of them, which is literally everyone that is not an end closer. But of course, you'd still want a couple of speed skills, some navigation skills, and not necessarily a gold stamina skill, but definitely a stamina recovery skill just in case. Keeping an eye on an Uma stat growth bonus can also give you an idea on how to train them. Super Creek, for example, has bonuses on stamina and wit, which means that stamina is the least of her worries, especially because her signature skill is stamina recovery. The higher wit growth really hints at you wanting to give her speed skills to compensate, and as a pace chaser, she'll also want navigation skills. Now for Gold Ship, her being a long-range specialist and end closer is obvious because of her stamina and power growth. Now remember, power does boost stamina as well. So stamina for Gold Ship is, if it is a concern, it is a very minor concern. Now, although her signature is speed-based, you still want to give, like I mentioned, navigation skills and speed skills as well to give her final push more oomph. After all, late surgers and end closers normally do not have as much speed as pace chasers and frontrunners because most of their stat investment is on power. And that's all I can teach you for training your Umas. This is just one video, of course, and feel free to watch other videos as well. After all, Good research is about researching multiple sources and resources, and then compiling data from all of them to arrive at a definitive conclusion. Good luck racing and training your Umas, and may you get more Umapyoys. See you in the next video, Foxtrot.